the gender pay gap. You've heard about it, right? It's a topic that gets everyone talking. But what if our whole understanding of where it came from is, well, wrong? Today, we're going to dive into the Nobel Prize-winning work of economist Claudia Goldin, who dug through 200 years of data to completely reframe the entire conversation. Most of us probably think of progress for women in the workplace as this long, steady, upward climb. But Goldin's research starts with a really powerful question. What if that straight line is a myth? What if the real story is far more surprising and a lot more complicated? Okay, before we jump in a time machine, let's just ground ourselves right here, right now. This chart lays out the global reality in pretty stark terms. Only about half of all women are in paid jobs, compared to 80% of men. And look, understanding this isn't just about chasing a number. It's about making sure an economy is actually using all of its talent. So the real question is, why is that gap still there? And that is where Claudia Goldin enters the story. She won the Nobel Prize for doing something nobody had ever managed to do before. She created the first ever complete picture of women's work and earnings over centuries. Her research is so important because it cuts through all the noise, all the opinions, and just looks at the cold, hard data. This right here gets to the absolute core of her project. Goldin's genius was to step back from the emotional debate and treat the pay gap like a giant, complex puzzle. She knew that to solve it, you first had to find all the pieces, and most importantly, figure out the real causes of the problem. Now, you've probably heard the usual explanations, right? The usual suspects, if you will. Things like women choosing different jobs, taking time off for family, facing discrimination, or just dealing with cultural expectations. And yeah, all those things are part of the story, but Goldin's work shows they are not the whole story, not even close. And this is exactly why digging deeper is so critical. Goldin points out that if we don't truly understand the root cause of a problem, our solutions, even the ones with the best intentions, can completely backfire. They can actually make things worse. The stakes for getting this right are just incredibly high. So to find that real cause, Goldin became a kind of data detective. She went back in time, and I mean way back. She painstakingly dug through 200 years of dusty records, cleaning up old census data, and in the process, she uncovered a pattern that would completely change how we see this whole issue. Remember that straight line of progress we talked about? Well, for decades, that was the standard assumption. Economists, historians, pretty much everyone just figured that as societies got more modern, women's role in the workforce just kept going up and up and up. But here it is, the big Nobel-winning reveal. The history of women at work is not a straight line at all. It's a U-shape. You can see it right here. Way back in the agrarian era, participation was actually really high. Then, boom, the Industrial Revolution hits, and it just tanks. It was only in the 20th century, with the rise of the service economy, that it started to climb back up again. This U-shaped curve. This is her big discovery. So you have to be asking, why the huge drop? Well, it all comes down to where the work happened. In the agrarian era, your home was your workplace. The whole family worked the farm together, so women were deeply involved. But then the Industrial Revolution comes along and separates work from home for the first time. Factory jobs were a lot harder to balance with raising a family, so a lot of women left the paid workforce. All right, so that brings us to the modern era, the upward swing of that U. As jobs shifted from being about physical strength in factories to brain power in offices, you'd think the pay gap would just shrink and disappear, right? Well, nope. This is where Goldin found another really surprising twist in the tale. The absolute key to understanding this next part is how people got paid. Back in the factory days, it was often based on pure output, how many widgets you made. A pay gap existed, sure, but a lot of it was explainable by physical differences. But in the service economy, that all changed. Pay became based on time, on experience, on seniority. And this is where Goldin found something incredible. The unexplained part of the pay gap actually got bigger. And the reason for that growing unexplained gap has a name. Goldin called it the career penalty. This is that huge, lasting hit to your earnings and your promotions that happens when you step away from your career path, even for just a little while, to care for your family. And it's not a single event. It's a chain reaction. It starts with that career pause for kids. Immediately, that continuous track of seniority and experience gets broken.
Your pay starts to lag behind your peers who didn't take a break, and it becomes almost impossible to ever fully catch up. Over time, this creates a cultural expectation, even a hiring bias, that women are just more likely to leave.
So, what do we do with this incredible 200-year-long insight? Well, this is where all that history becomes a really powerful tool for us today. It can help us shape better policies and hopefully avoid making the same old mistakes. Golden's work basically points to two different paths. On one hand, you have reactive policies, like just imposing gender quotas. The risk there is that you end up with tokenism or people in the wrong roles. The other path is about structural solutions. Instead of reacting, you change the system itself. Things like making flexible work arrangements normal for everyone, men and women. That removes the very barrier that creates the career penalty in the first place without causing new problems. You know, when you boil it all down, maybe the biggest lesson from all of Golden's research is the need for perspective. These huge economic transformations, from farm to factory, from factory to office, they don't happen overnight. Their full impact on how we work and live can take decades, even generations, to become clear. And that leaves us with a massive question for our own time. Because right now, we are standing at the dawn of the next great economic shift: artificial intelligence. So the question is, can we learn from the surprising, U-shaped history of the last 200 years? Can we be smarter this time around and more intentional about building a truly equitable future?